What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. It is Monday, March 31st. My name is Ewan. On today's episode, I'm going to be going over my Japanese Grand Prix team selection and a little bit of a race preview. We made it through 7 brutal days without F1 Fantasy in our lives. However, I did do some content. I had a ultimate budget building guide that I made last week, along with 2-week early season overreactions with Zach GP from the Fantasy Formula. So definitely go check those out if you were craving some extra F1 fantasy content. But yes, today will be the race week kind of schedule content. I'll be doing team selection today, and I'm going to be doing a live Q&A on Wednesday night, 7:30 UK time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern in the States. So Wednesday, if you are craving some F1 fantasy questions getting answered, hit me up. I will be there. But we're going to get right into it here with the Suzuka circuit preview. Corners 18, laps 53, DRS zones 1. Over the last 3 seasons, it's been 14th for overtakes, and it's been 10 DNFs, 3.3 per race per year kind of thing. And then 2024 podium was Verstappen, Perez, Sainz. I was watching the highlights of those last night. Not the most entertaining race, but Yuki Tsunoda, man, he was making some bang up passes there. But this is one of the favorite driver circuits on the entire calendar. Should be pretty interesting. Those first few corners there, that's where Danny Rick and Alex Albon had a crash on the first lap. So hopefully a lot of our drivers can make it through this race unscathed, as we are suffering from some DNF penalties. It's been about 8 days now since the Ferrari DSQ, so hopefully it is okay for Ferrari managers to come back out and rejoin the F1 Fantasy Works. I watched Pop Pan Man's team selection with his violin segment. Maybe it can heal some wounds for you guys as well. So highly recommend to go over there. But this is a Suzuka circuit in Japan, one of the drivers' favorites. And yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I think McLaren is going to do quite well around here, but we'll have to wait and see for Friday practices. Pirelli preview, we don't have the full preview out yet. They usually maybe release it on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, but right now it's the C1, C2, C3 as the compounds, the 3 hardest compounds on the circuit. But once the preview comes out, I will tweet that out. You can follow me right there at F1 Fantasy Ewan on TikTok or X, and I will tweet that out. And you can also see the deadline there, 7 a.m. UK time, 2 a.m. Eastern in the States for lineup lock. And as usual, I will be here for the deadline stream, so I hope to see you there as well. Going over to the weather, right now it's pretty early to forecast it. Like Google doesn't even have like the hour by hour stuff yet, but 15 degrees Celsius on Friday, partly cloudy, 17 degrees on Saturday with clouds, and then 19 degrees Celsius with 60% chance of rain on Sunday. More rain. Are we serious? Okay, we will get into that a little bit closer. Maybe by Wednesday when I do the Q&A stream, there will be more weather kind of for us to go over. Maybe hour by hour, we'll be able to see how that all works out. But getting into the kind of meat of the episode here, just going to go over some 2024 notable performances. Verstappen, Leclerc, Norris, Russell, Tsunoda all did okay. Tsunoda down there, 10 points, 1.2 points per million. Remember that number because that's going to come in handy in just a little bit. Verstappen had a bang-up weekend. Leclerc, Norris, Russell. Russell not so great. Norris finished 5th in this race last season. I just watched the highlights, so I should know that. Yeah, he finished behind the Red Bulls and the McLarens, and I think maybe he did finish behind Russell, but overall not too shabby of a weekend for the Red Bulls. We'll see if them becoming the livery with the V-Carb livery, the Racing Bulls livery, helps them out at all this week in Japan. But yeah, Tsunoda down there, 10 points, 1.2 points per million. And Tsunoda is now a Red Bull driver. So the last episode I did was Thursday with Zach, but I actually recorded that on Tuesday. That's a little bit of editing magic for you right there. So we did not have the news yet that Tsunoda and Lawson had officially swapped, but they have. Yuki Tsunoda is a Red Bull driver. Liam Lawson is a Racing Bulls driver. It is official after 2 races. Red Bull have totally lost the plot, if you ask me. But yeah, I'm glad Yuki is in the Red Bull. I think he deserved that probably over Liam. Just imagine if they had done it the other way. They could have been like, okay, Yuki's the elder statesman. We'll give him the first crack. And then they could have swapped him out. And no one would have really been like, people would have been outraged after 2 races, and they should be for Liam Lawson as well. But they could have done it the other way, and it probably wouldn't have stung as much. But yeah, Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull, Liam Lawson in the Racing Bulls, and the game has handled it like this. As of 7:27 in Germany, this is it. We don't have any pictures for Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson yet in their Racing Bulls attire or the Red Bull attire yet, but the game says this on the homepage. Action required. Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson have changed race teams. If you currently have either driver in your team, you'll need to use your transfer allowance to avoid inactive driver penalties. Highly suggest doing that. I think it sucks that people that had Yuki Tsunoda or Liam Lawson in their team are essentially being punished for having them in there, but unfortunately this is just how the game kind of goes with it. So I would get those drivers out of there ASAP. However, they did just swap prices essentially. So Yuki Tsunoda 16.8 million, Liam Lawson 8.4 million. That is what Tsunoda was in the Racing Bulls. That's what Lawson was in the Red Bulls. So they just inactivated those drivers, swapped them, and then reactivated them. But if you have a Racing Bulls Tsunoda or a Red Bulls Lawson in your lineup, you will have to use a transfer to get them out, or otherwise you will suffer the inactive driver penalties. Whether I want either of these drivers, I'm not so sure. I'm not entirely sure how the game is going to kind of value them, because they don't have any scores as these current drivers. So Liam Lawson's Red Bull scores don't seem to have carried over to his Racing Bull scores. So how the points per million or how their scores will work is kind of still to be determined. And I think I'm happy with just taking a back seat from either of these drivers, seeing how they do, how it kind of goes, especially on Friday. I mean, if Tsunoda or Lawson look like they're flying out the gates with their new teams on Friday, maybe I'll start to think about it a little bit more. But as of right now, I don't really see me going for either of those drivers, even though the appeal of Yuki Tsunoda as driver of the day, first race with Red Bull, his home race, very tempting for those 10 extra points, but I'm just not sure if it's worth it at 16.8. If he looks flying, if he has a great weekend in Japan, bags driver of the day, Q3, maybe like puts it in the top 7 for the entire weekend, then we've got another budget building option on our hands here, as a B tier asset looks to rise to an A tier asset, but we'll have to wait and see. So that's where my head is at right now on Monday morning. And this is the kind of main part of the episode here, the pricing algorithm. So it looks like for Japan, based on some dummy data, based on what is going around the F1 Fantasy community, F1 Fantasy Tools Discord. Also, if you are not a member of the F1 Fantasy Tools premium site, use promo code UN50 to get 50% off your first month. Highly recommend that. You can set up your teams to get live scoring. All the price changes are in there for your team as well. You just click your T1, your T2, your T3 minute highlights. It's all very, very nice stuff. So highly recommend their product there. But the pricing algorithm is right now, A tier is more than 19 million. We learned that in China after Kimi Antonelli only went up 0.3, and anything less than 19 million is a B tier asset, or it's between 18.5 and 19 as of right now. I guess we don't have the price super locked in yet. As you can see here, if you get above 1.2 points per million, you are expected to rise the maximum amount of your tier. So that's 0.3 for an A tier, 0.6 for a B tier asset. If you go from 0.9 points per million to 1.2 points per million, 0.1 rise for a tier asset, 0.2 rise for a B tier asset. 0.6 to 0.9 is what we're classing as poor, where you'll go down 0.1 million as an A tier asset, go down 0.2 as a B tier asset, and terrible is anything below 0.6 points per million, which is going to be negative 0.3 million for an A tier asset and negative 0.6 for a B tier asset. So that is the current thinking when it comes to the Japanese Grand Prix. So that's where you kind of need to think about where your assets are, who's in your team, where each one of those drivers are, and how you're going to kind of maneuver them around. If you want to be a points-based building squad, a budget-based building squad, that's really up to you. As of right now, I'm still trying to build budget. As you can see, 101.4 million is my T1 squad. I'd love to get that above 104 million by the end of this weekend. That's probably going to sacrifice some points for my F1 Fantasy squad, but that is where my thinking is at right now. And I wanted to go over just how this is changing in the game. So like we're just working off of theories. Nothing is 100% confirmed. Hopefully after Japan, if this works out the way we think it's going to work out, we will know. I think we may not be able to say 100% until after Bahrain, but Japan will get us pretty close to where we need to be. But you can just see how everything has changed over the last 3 weeks. So Australia, it was 0.4 points per million. China was 0.8 points per million. And now Japan is going to be 1.2 points per million to get a great price rise. Good, kind of going up at the same, change, poor, terrible. But just know that this is still pretty fluid. Nothing is guaranteed this week. So while I will be working off of this as my price per million or points per million kind of thing, and just kind of going off of that as my advice, there is a chance that this is not going to work out when the scores finalize, wherever you are in the world after the Grand Prix on Sunday. But right now, working with the theory that a great performance in Japan is going to be over 1.2 points per million. Good performance is 0.9 to 1.2 points per million. Poor 0.6 to 0.9 points per million. And terrible is below 0.6 points per million. So that is where we're at. And now we need to go look at which drivers we need to avoid and which drivers we need to target for these price changes. So as you can see here, we're on f1fantasytools.com. Fantastic place. Promo code UN50. Their budget builder tool. And this is kind of what I was just talking about. Warning, the data is yet to be verified. New pricing algorithm for 2025 and could therefore be inaccurate. User discretion is advised. A detailed explanation of the algorithm used in the tool can be found here. And you should read this post. It is super helpful. It even goes over like the 2024 system, or like how this system would have looked in 2024. Really, really strong explanation. Great job by the folks over at f1fantasytools.com. But who are we targeting and who are we avoiding? Well, we can just go over here to this handy dandy tool. And yeah, if you're looking at drivers in the A tier asset that need to score single digit points, like a Lando Norris or a Kimi Antonelli, those are very strong options to have in your F1 fantasy team. Russell, Piastri, that's where you have to score a pretty decent chunk of points. Piastri, Verstappen, and Albon are the three drivers who have not DNF'd this season. They need to score over their average points for the season to go over to get a 0.3 or 0.6 price increase this week. So Piastri, Verstappen, and Albon need to score above their season average in order to have a max price rise. So those drivers are a little bit shaky, especially Verstappen, 44 points here, as you can see. Piastri at 28, if McLaren is as strong as I think they're going to be this weekend in Suzuka, Piastri should get to 28 points pretty comfortably. However, you are looking at, if it was like a boring race and he was P2 in qualifying and P2 in the race and somehow had no overtakes or whatever, you'd be looking at 27 points. And that would not be good. You'd only be going up 0.1. So that is something to think about when you go with Piastri. However, in all likelihood, he'll get a couple of overtakes here and there on the track. But just know that 28 points is a little bit tougher for Piastri than it is for 7 for Lando Norris. However, moving down to the B tier assets here, this is where we're going to make our money in the budget building department. Esteban Ocon, -2 to get a 0.6 price rise. Lance Stroll, 1 point. Behrman, 3. Hulkenberg, 6. Lawson, right now, the game is valuing that he will need 11 points to go up 0.6 million just based on how the game is working right now. So 8.4 is his price, 11 points. That's over 1.2 points per million. So that's how he would get there. I think he's capable of getting that. Tsunoda here, 16.8. 21 points. That's a little bit tougher. Could be some overtakes, some positions gained in Sunday's race, but Tsunoda would need a pretty good weekend to get to that 21 points. 16, I think, is attainable. 21, I'm not so sure. Albon here is another driver I said. So it's Piastri, Verstappen, and Albon, the three drivers that need to score above their season average in order to get a max price rise. So Albon has scored 28 points this year, 14 points per race. So he needs 19 points this weekend to get a 0.6 price rise. I think he could get that as well, but that would be his, like you can see here, his best week of the season. Drivers to avoid, however, are pretty much from Hadjar down. These guys are all, in all likelihood, going to go down another 0.6 million. However, if you have stuck with Hadjar, Bortoleto, Doohan, and maybe Sainz, if you kept them in China and you're willing to swallow another 0.6 price decrease in order to save a transfer or something, it's maybe not the worst thinking, because as long as these drivers can avoid another DNF in Japan, they are highly likely to shoot up in price in Bahrain, because they're going to get that Australia DNF knocked off of their F1 Fantasy 3-race rolling average. And after that, they should, in theory, shoot up in price for Bahrain. So these drivers down here, I would not be bringing any of them in. However, if like a Hadjar, Bortoleto, Doohan, Sainz, if you've kept them and you're just trying to like stick them around kind of thing, like you don't want to transfer them out, I don't hate it. But Gasly, Alonso, those guys have more recent DNFs, DSQs. In Gasly's case, I would get rid of them because you're not going to have them rise for a couple more races. But we should really be looking at Ocon, Stroll, Behrman, Hülkenberg, maybe Lawson if you want to take a punt. And those are the drivers in the B tier we need to be bringing in. Norris, Antonelli, Russell, Piastri, those would be the A tier drivers. Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, I think I would avoid this week if you're trying to do budget building kind of area of your squad as you try to get more expensive assets in your team. But that's where my thinking is at right now, based on the F1 Fantasy Tools kind of prevailing theory in the F1 Fantasy community. So I would go, like I said, Norris, Antonelli, Russell, Piastri would be the target drivers in the A tier. Ocon, Stroll, Behrman, Hülkenberg, Lawson, and maybe Albon in the B tier. You guys have stuck around a pretty long time. I really appreciate it. I'm about to get into team selection. The last thing I want to talk about before team selection is that the fact we are in a triple header. So we've got 3 races over the next 3 weekends to get into: Japan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia. On the screen here, we've got the dates. We've got the lineup locks for local time, UK time, and US Eastern. So you don't need to go too much in depth to this slide. Like Japan is this weekend, Bahrain's the following weekend, Saudi Arabia is the weekend after that. But just note these times, know that we're going to be a little all over the map. So 7 a.m. lineup lock in the UK this weekend, then 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. 2 a.m. in the States this weekend, followed by noon and then 1 p.m. For the following 2 weekends. So if you're like watching deadline streams, hopefully you're watching mine, any of the other fantastic content creators, just know that we'll all be on at different times over the next 3 weekends. So be flexible if you want to watch those deadline streams, or just know your lineup locks. Practices are going to be like, some are going to be in the middle of the night, some will be late at night, that sort of stuff as well. So just want to let you know about the triple header coming up, and just how we're going to be a little all over the map in F1 Fantasy, but the content will still be the same. On my end, there'll be team selections, there'll be special episodes, Q&As, deadline streams, cool down room episodes after 1 hour after every Grand Prix as well. I will be there. But you guys have waited long enough, so let's get into some team selection. So here is the T1 team here, 470K in the world after a pretty bad Australia, bounced back a little bit in China, 101.4 million in the bank. Antonelli, Albon, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Ocon, McLaren, Williams, 2 free transfers here. I'd love to roll into Bahrain, but I kind of want to balance a little bit of scoring points with gaining budget here. Nico Hülkenberg, Alex Albon. Like I said, Alex Albon, one of 3 drivers that has a score above their season average, that has not DNF'd or DSQ'd this season to get the max price rise. So I'm a little apprehensive about still having him in my squad here. I think he's still an okay investment. Like, I don't want to like really run away from him all that much. So, but with Antonelli being an A-tier asset, I kind of want to get back into maybe more of the Piastri mold. Double McLaren seems strong. So I'm going to have to use 2 free transfers. I've got 0.2 million in the bank, so I really can't go Antonelli all the way to Piastri. Can't get rid of Hülkenberg and go down to anyone that's going to be on a rise. So all the transfers I want to use this week, I'm going to want to bring in a guy that's going to rise and get rid of a guy that may not rise as much. So Hülkenberg is okay. So the moves I'm thinking about are Antonelli and Albon out for Piastri, and then probably Behrman, if I can find him, sort by value, because I don't have Behrman in my squad yet. And that's double Haas, which is okay. Don't feel amazing about that. We'll see how they go. I did hear that in China, they resurfaced the track. Pirelli called it the smoothest track on the calendar right now. And apparently this let Haas lower their ride height, and it may have slightly flattered the team a little bit. Suzuka has also resurfaced, so we'll see on Friday if Haas looks okay. That probably means that they're able to run their car at an appropriate height, and they're looking pretty good. So that will give me more confidence for this. Leaves me 2.6 in the bank. I don't really mind having money left over right now because I'm more concerned about gaining budget. The other option is that I could leave whoever I just took out, that Alex Albon, in the squad there, and that leaves me 10 million, and I could go with Haas as a constructor. It leaves me a little bit less in the bank, so it means I'm using more of my budget to kind of make it work for me. And Haas is pretty much dead set on a rise this week. Ocon, Hülkenberg, Stroll, all four, or these 5 assets down here, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Ocon, McLaren, Haas, are all pretty close to being an easy max rise. So that's 0.6, that's 2.4, 2.7 million here. If I can get these guys up, that's going to be 3.3. So almost 3.6 million if everything goes according to plan here. I'm not sure how confident I feel about Albon getting his max price rise. So that does lead me a little bit into maybe keeping Williams and going down to Behrman instead of Albon, because just Behrman needs less points. If we go back over here, you can see Behrman needs 3 points right now, whereas Albon needs 19, Hülkenberg needs 6, Stroll 1, Ocon -2, even Haas -31 compared to Williams 13. So those are kind of the main moves that I'm thinking about with my T1 squad, but I did want to discuss another squad with you, my T3 team here, guys. I'm looking at this. This is kind of the squad that I would be looking to get with my T1 squad. See, Piastri, Albon, Stroll, Ocon, Hülkenberg, McLaren, Haas. Let me know in the comments if you guys have a squad similar to this, but what you guys think about this. I just posted it on X before this video came out as well. Would you guys make any moves here? Can I just roll? And is there any point to making any changes here? There's nothing really Leclerc and Hamilton. I could get up to them from Piastri, but they're both set to go down 0.3, whereas Oscar should rise if he gets a pretty good weekend at all. Even 0.1 would be better than Leclerc and Hamilton. They're pretty much locked into falling this weekend as well. It could go down to Russell if Mercedes look good, but this squad here, the T3 squad, is set up pretty nicely. It's got some budget risers. It's got some point scoring assets here. But yeah, let me know in the comments, this T3 squad, what would you change, or could I just roll and just burn a transfer? I got 2 free transfers in this squad too, but is it worth even making any moves? I guess we're going to wait until Friday, but yeah, that's kind of where my thinking is with my T1 and my T3 squad. The T2 squad is a little bit of a mess. Might need to wildcard that out, but I'll discuss that more on the deadline live stream. But yeah, let me know what your comments are, what your lineup concerns are, and we'll go over them in the comments. As always, I think I've been pretty good about this. I pretty much respond to every single comment. So if you have even the slightest F1 fantasy question, just drop it in the comments below, and we will go over it and we will work it out together. But I want to let you guys know the deadline live stream, I think I've talked about it a little bit, but Japanese Grand Prix deadline live stream, 2 p.m. local time, 6 a.m. UK time, 1 a.m. US Eastern. I will be here bright and early with my cup of coffee ready to go, and we'll be discussing for the last hour or so before the lineups lock for qualifying for the Japanese Grand Prix, what our lineup decisions is, what we learned from Friday, if we got any like wrenches thrown in after free practice 3, but we do have 3 traditional practice sessions this week, so that'll be nice. We should be getting a lot of data, FP1, FP2, FP3, some qualifying sim times, some long run data times, all that fun stuff. So there should be plenty to break down on the deadline stream. I hope that I see you there. But that will do it for the team selection for the Japanese Grand Prix. It was a little bit of a long one, so I appreciate you guys kind of sticking around. There's quite a lot to talk about. Yuki Tsunoda coming into Red Bull, some weather, some price changes. Pricing algorithm is very fluid. And then, yeah, the team selection is going to be it's pretty straightforward, but it's just kind of like which way am I going to be leaning after practice. But like I said, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel or the podcast if you listen on the podcast side. And yeah, any likes, subscriptions, always appreciated. We're almost at 2,500, so let's see if we can get there by Sunday's cooldown room stream. That would be great. Really appreciate and support there. And yeah, it's going to be a pretty fun-filled week. Wednesday night, Q&A live stream, so bring your questions, get ready. I'll be answering your questions for about an hour or so for F1 Fantasy ahead of the Japanese Grand Prix. But hopefully you guys have a good week. I will see you Wednesday night. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time.